Hello and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, the editor for CIO New Zealand. And my guest today is Peter Kennedy, who's Chief Digital Officer at Genesis Energy. Hello, Peter. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Great. And congratulations on being part of the CIO 50. You were in our top 25 this year. So congratulations on that. So to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit more about your role at Genesis Energy and what your team does?
Sure, Kathy. So I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Genesis, and I lead a team of around 300 people. The functional responsibilities of my role can be grouped into three parts. The first is, I guess, the classical technology part, made up of digital, tech, and data for the group. And when you think about Genesis is really two halves. You've kind of got the generation part of the business and the retail part of the business. And due to the nature of those kind of halves, I spend most of my time with the retail part where there's a lot of digital in terms of customer interactions, customer interfaces, and digital platforms. And at the moment as well, a big project around digital transformation. So that's the technology part of my role, if you will. I've also got a product part. And so I look after the new product development endeavors at Genesis. And we know that as energy management. So that's where we're trying to develop products, I guess, on the customer side of the meter. So it's not about supplying the energy, but rather what a customer does with it. And that's quite exciting. And that could be things like electric vehicles or heat pump control, trying to optimize how customers use their energy. And lastly, I've also got the large business segment. So this is the P&L and end-to-end customer delivery.
So a big role, and as you said, transformation is definitely a huge part of that role. And the word transformation, it's thrown around quite a bit. It is a bit of a buzzword, and it's often, said that it, or thought of that it's just a given within organizations. But in reality, transformation is not that easy. So can you talk us through how that approach has taken shape in your own career?
Sure, and I think you're right. Transformations are never easy. My earliest involvement with transformations was right back early, as a graduate. And I was in Carter Holt Harvey at the time, so a large corporate in New Zealand. And it was a swapping out of a proprietary ERP to SAP. And that was my first experience, just watching the scale of this change and what the business was hoping to achieve, but also the amount of technology change that was going on at the time. And through time since then, I've moved closer to the edge of change. So I was a customer of that change, if you like, early on. But I've gently moved to the edge, whether it was new products, businesses merging and otherwise, and now leading technology teams that are right at the front of those changes. But my main, I guess, perspective is that, my foundational perspective, I suppose, is that of a recipient of the change. That's really formed a lot of my early views about what transformations are about and what success looks like.
So being a recipient of that change is, I think, always instrumental, and it's a good learning experience for CIOs. So walking back from, that end product of transformation, what do you think are some of the key steps CIOs must take along the way?
Oh, the kickstart, if you like, for any of these journeys, there's so many. But I think one of the key places to start is really being crystal clear on the why for your change. And that's, when you think about the why, often it can be something where you're trying to evolve a business. It's an opportunity, or you're mitigating a risk. It can be a choice of the end of life of systems. So being really clear on the why frames you for the journey ahead. I think the next is to identify the scale of the ambition for change in your business. It's kind of connected to your why, but there's separate things, which is truly how ambitious is your business and what is the capacity and readiness for change. Because these are hard, and it's not just about the technology, it's about the business changing with the technology. I think then coming on to the technology, as a CIO, you need to understand the technology and the process components of the change. That's really making sure you understand where you're starting from, not just where you want to get to. But I think along that journey, it's understanding what your strengths are as a business and where you have weaknesses and other areas you want partners to complement. So it's kind of who's going to help you on this journey. Setting up shared goals and incentives with internal and partner teams is really important if you've got the right incentives, and being super clear on your delivery method and decision-making rights. One of the frameworks I'm a fan of is the RAPID model by Bain, and that really focuses on who's got the D, who's the decision maker. And that's a really good framework for setting up right from the onset around decision-making and governance overall. So look, that's just a handful. It could go on, but those are really important questions and some of the decisions you'll need to make around how you're setting up your transformation for success.
Yeah, great. That's a wonderful framework. And as you say, knowing who the decision maker is can be absolutely key to getting some of these things moving along. So, transformation is challenging, as we mentioned. What are some of the kind of common roadblocks do you think that should be, avoided if possible, or that you should be aware of on the way?
I think if I just touch on one, it's around the why. And it sounds like it's an ethereal question, but it's really important. So if you have a project which is a system going end of life and it needs replacing, there's a journey you need to take there. But if you have no do nothing scenario, it makes your set of choices very clear. If it's a discretionary choice the business is making and it's choosing to enter into a new space for commercial benefit or some de-risking rather than in something as critical as end of life, you really need to be clear on that why. Now, where it's a choice, I think the challenge you need to have come early on is being very clear on the deciding factors. So it's not just who's got the decision-making rights, but ultimately, what are the factors that matter? And planning for the necessary buy-in along the way. So where it's a choice to the business, I think making sure you're really clear on all the benefits, being clear on the risks as well, because there's no risk-free option here, clearly, but really planning to not only really clearly articulate them, but get your story around all the stakeholders. Because if it's seen as a choice, it means that a bunch of your people in your business might decide that it's something that they could choose not to do as well. So being really clear on why on balance it's the best thing for your business to do right up front is crucial.
Now, every business is evolving. So do you think of transformation as, a project with a deadline and milestones and celebrating the wins? Or do you think that transformation is just an ongoing development within a business? And if it is an ongoing development, is there a risk of burnout?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think there's a risk of burnout. It seems everywhere these days. There's more and more ways to connect with our people in our projects and no more hours in the day rather. So I think, but if you come back to the start of your question, I think transformations, they're really complex. We know they're not easy. And I do think they benefit from they're more classical program delivery methods such as milestones, right? And so I think having milestones to measure progress versus plan, I think when you have complex interconnected work streams is really important. So I do think there is a start and an end to a transformation, but transformation more broadly is always happening. And in the broader sense, transformation can happen over many small projects just as much as it can happen over one big one. But the larger, more classic transformation projects, absolutely, milestones are really helpful to make sure that you're moving at the speed with the right balance of risk versus, going up to value and decision-making efficiency that you need.
Now, you've been in your role, you've been at Genesys for about 3.5 years now, and Chief Digital Officer since early this year. Is that right? Or early
That's
last
correct.
year?
Yeah, February this year.
So in what ways are you collaborating and influencing the organization and its leadership team?
Well, I can certainly answer from my side, but obviously collaboration and influence is something you really need to test from the other side. But certainly one of the key tenets of how we operate at Genesys within the leadership team and within the executive is we operate a first team approach. And this is a framework Patrick Lencioni, I think, came up with it, certainly coined the phrase. And that means that my core role at Genesys is as a member of the leadership team of Genesys, not I wouldn't say, yes, I'm a chief digital officer, but actually I have a role as a member of the lead team. And that's the same for the other members of that lead team. And what that means is we're actively encouraged input into all the key decisions that affect the business across the domain areas, not just those where we have functional responsibilities as well. And that's easy to say. What does that mean? It means that you have an effective dialogue about the business as a team. So it's not technology talking to finance, it's two leaders, for example, talking about the business, and they may have functional responsibilities. So that dialogue creates a really good platform for collaboration, and I think that's the starting point, really. Beyond that, when it's kind of reaching out into the business more broadly, capability mapping is something that we've seen as a potentially really useful tool, and we're actually fine-tuning at the moment to create aligned plans where we're making sure that we're developing the technology the business needs tomorrow, not just what's been asked for today. But some of you out there will be familiar with that, and I would really advocate that. And another, Kathy, perhaps, is when I talked earlier about the responsibilities of my role, perhaps rather unusually for a CIO, I've got a P&L, I've got a customer segment, I think that's really important because that means effectively part of my team is a customer of technology. And so we're walking in our customers' shoes and we're really experiencing the service we offer the business within our team. And that really, really provides you an honest appraisal of what it feels like to be a customer of technology. And it means that we can also experiment, innovate quicker in ways to improve how we partner and support business units, much like the one that sits within my current remit. And lastly, I think around the technology strategy, the key piece here, look, technology strategies are an important part of most businesses' fabric. They're there. But my learning and reflection is that setting the right metrics is probably as important as having the strategy in the first place. And I think we'd all recognize many times strategies are drafted and rolled out, but the business metrics that we are measured against don't change. It's the classics. You've got EBIT, you might have technology spend over revenue, some other indexes. So ensuring you've got outcome metrics that really demonstrate your strategy is being delivered. That's the key to ensuring it's not just a document that gets drafted and then popped back in the drawer, but something that lives day to day and helps influence decision-making across not only technology teams, but broader business leadership teams.
Now, Peter, the role of CIO, it is evolving. And, we've seen, especially during the pandemic, CIO is really stepping up to the plate and driving business strategy like we've never seen before. So what do you think are some of the key attributes of a successful modern day CIO when it comes to leadership?
Yeah, sure. People skills. Now, firstly, you're a partner to the business and relationships matter. We talked about earlier on how as part of the first team concept, my relationship with my peers matter and vice versa. But secondly, also the teams are getting more cross-functional is my observation. And so that really matters. My advice though, and so having people skills, great. Not everyone's great at that though. And so my advice would be if you aren't great with people, surround yourself with those that are. And I know I have a reasonably good EQ, but I don't have the best EQ. And so I make sure wherever I'm sitting, I know who does and who can be my eyes and ears to make sure messages are landing in times that I might otherwise miss. I was going to say another is around being visionary, and that's about to see beyond what our customers and colleagues are asking for today and what the needs are tomorrow, and to be able to sell that vision. So there is a lag. So being a CIO, some of our projects take time, it takes investment. And so if we're asking what people need now, it's too late. And so we really need to be looking out a year or 2, 3, 4, and saying, what do we want to be able to do as a business then and start planning for that now? So looking a little bit beyond what's around the corner. Calm is really important. Be resilient and play the long game. And try not to lose composure when you face headwinds or lunging at the latest threat or near miss, because they're ever present and I'd say increasing risks for cybersecurity and privacy. And these can add to pressure. And you need to be able to manage that. So having composure and recognizing that, yes, there's a threat today, there's probably another one tomorrow. And so making sure you can play the long game with your team and you manage that burnout that you talked about before is really important. And lastly, I'd say be a value creator, not just a risk mitigator. So when you think about the point before, you could spend all of your time and more focusing just on the risks and you'd be doing a good job, but you'd be focusing just on risks. And I think the role of a CIO increasingly is how to be that value creator, not just a risk mitigator.
I love that. Be a value creator. So, you spoke there about people and the importance of people. And obviously, there's a huge war for talent right now. And, employees have a real, they are the ones with the power and the choice over where they work. So how are you creating that internal culture that really helps your people thrive?
I think the first point there, Kathy, is being clear on the culture you want. And ensure this is complementary to the broader company culture. So if every leader just decided, hey, here's the culture in my team, and then someone else has a different view, it could be a bit noisy. And some of the behaviors that support that culture will be misaligned. And so being clear on that's really important. So ask yourself, have you defined the attributes of your target company culture? And at Genesis, I can say ours is empowered, aligned, and accountable. And so I know that, my leaders know that, and we try and make sure that we're consistent in the behaviors that would bring that to life. So some basics in that space, I guess, what I consider basics, but are really important, not always present, sadly, is making sure you got regular one-to-ones with your team. At team meetings, have a check-in. And what I mean by this is you have a chat around how are you as a person turning up to the meeting, not just what are you working on at the moment, making sure you're checking in and saying, where am I? today? How am I as the person arriving at work, not the person in work? Because that affects us. And so building that dialogue and understanding that at certain times, certain members are down and certain members are up, and talking about that and being able to help each other is really important. Another in that camp is around quarterly objectives. So some businesses use annual or other cadence. Quarterly works well for us. But at the top of that template we use is a personal goal. And it's there very deliberately because, again, we're people turning up, and there's plenty of time. We'll talk about metrics and milestones, etc. But really having a goal at the top that you want to share with the team, and we review our success against our objectives quarterly as a team. So we have that discussion, and we gently peer review. The confidence to do that's really important. I'm not going to name and shame, but if someone's not delivered, they should put a red mark. If they've delivered it blue, we celebrate. Fantastic. The other thing we do within those quarterly objectives is we ask for a leadership learning. So what is it as a leader, when I reflect upon the quarter that was, I might look at my annual goal for myself, my quarterly objectives, have I met them? But what have I learned? Those learnings are gold, because it's even just the discipline of having the reflection is valuable, but sharing it with the team, even more so, right? We all learn from everyone else's learnings. And in that last piece, I'd sort of say in that basics of the hygiene is development plans. They're really important. Beyond that, though, I think, because that for me, I consider hygiene and important, but we start to get perhaps some of the differentiation where we're investing in this is one concept, for example, random coffees. And it's something that one of the team members had as an idea, and you basically put yourself on and they match you up with someone random in the business you probably wouldn't normally work with. And once a month you have a coffee with this person, and the connections and conversation you have are fantastic. Again, join in social activities, have fun, build trust. I'm a member of our touch rugby team and enjoy a game of table tennis here in the office. The thing I'd encourage you to do, though, is don't show up if it's not authentic. So making sure you find things you enjoy where people see you being your non-work side, you're kind of just your general person showing up and enjoying is probably my advice. I wouldn't just do it as a tick box exercise, but take the opportunity to find out what's going on in your team community, your broader team and business community, and show up. And another, I think, more it's a bit common in some businesses, but we use Joyous as a framework to make sure we get a regular pulse for feedback. If I was to think about the bigger changes, so are we trying to change the shape a little bit? There's some frameworks which will really help you on your journey. And Genesis recently achieved the Rainbow Tick. In terms of equity, we've been looking at Mind the Gap, and in terms of gender pay gap, similar roles. We've got the Genies, which is quite fun. So it's an annual company awards event and importantly, this celebrates and recognizes individuals at all levels, but against the behaviors that matter. Now, it's really important to connect those behaviors consistently to the culture you want. So it's not just saying such and such is a great guy or such and such is a great woman for X and Y and Z. It's saying how do the behaviors match those that support your culture? And so you're reinforcing and recognizing at the same time the culture you're trying to create. And if I think about technology teams and the journey we've been on, we operate chapters at Genesis. And so what that means is if you're a developer or a BA or a tester, you're a member of a chapter. And that's kind of a chapter for each of them. And then you spend your time working cross-functional squads. When I joined the business, these chapters were effectively seen as cost centers. And costs, we know what a stretch look like, minimize, right? And so you're looking for efficiency and minimization. The journey we've been on is actually to invest in these and see them as an asset. And as such, an example is chapter time. So once a week or a fortnight, the team get together for 4 hours, and the chapter that is, and invest in the discipline of their chapter. So that could be improving frameworks or progression plans, you name it, but that's where they work on being a better developer community or a test community, rather than delivering within the squads the very capability that they come to work and have the skills for. So it's really, that one in particular is something I'm a massive fan of. There's still more to do here, don't get me wrong, but it's really changed the way we think about our technology resources as an asset rather than a cost. And I think that's part of the journey if you want to both attract and retain good people.
So, Peter, when it comes to high-performing teams, obviously diversity is another key factor in having a high-performing team. So what do you think can be done to attract more people from different backgrounds, whether that be gender, ethnicity, age, neurodiversity? Why don't we have enough diversity in IT, and what more can be done to attract people to these roles?
Yeah, and look, it's a real issue. There are some systemic issues at play here, and it's very difficult for any one business to solve that. in isolation. But I think your point in picking up on the word, how do we attract people in? I think there are some practical things we can do as business leaders. And if we get down to brass tacks on this, it's if you want different people in your team, you need to make sure you've got a pipeline approach, really, all the way from attraction through to the screening that's going to work for you. And so an example would be if you wanted to dial up a different part of your community in terms of a different, portion, whether it was gender or ethnicity or age or whatever it might be, for that population, make sure that population are reviewing the adverts you've put out there in market. Not just the people that have left the role, which is the classic, hey, can you help me write your updated JD? If you want different sort of ethnicities or otherwise in your group, different parts of the community, you've got to make sure the adverts are appealing. So have them reviewed by those that you want to attract, just not those that are leaving. The second is using your network to recruit in the communities you want to grow. So again, back to whichever part of that community it might be, making sure that you are a great place to work for that community, but really using that community to help you find more of the community you're looking for. Another one, which I think is tempting to leave to the professionals, but is important, is at the screening level. So we've got great talent partners at Genesys, and they've been screening talent for a long time, and they're looking for a certain thing when it comes to technology roles. But if you want something different, you've got to make sure you get in and work with your talent partners and help them find that in amongst the many applications you might have. Once you've got your adverts right, make sure that you're looking for something different in the screening rather than, I guess, rewarding the same screening filters that have been there for the last, decades or more. Don't assume that your screening is working for you. There may be great diverse candidates coming in that are getting screened out early in the process and you don't even get to see the CVs. But that means working with your talent partners. And lastly, take some risks. If you want something different, you've got to be up for it. So don't look to replace the person that left with the same person. Take a risk, get involved, and start right at the beginning with the attraction process.
Some great practical advice there. So Peter, when you reflect on your own career and you as a leader, are there any mistakes that you've made along the way that when you reflect back on them, were a great learning experience for you?
Yeah, there's one, and I touched on it around capability mapping, and I smile because with hindsight, it may have been an obvious mistake, but I think my observation coming into Genesys was we had a big roadmap of stuff, maybe hinted at it earlier, that was fixing today's problems, but not necessarily building towards tomorrow's capability. And so we said, and I'd seen this work in other businesses and they had a lot of support from the architecture team here. I said, right, great, let's roll out capability mapping. And this is an approach where the architecture team would partner with a business unit leader to create a detailed plan that captures the current state of capability for a given business unit and then the target state. And then you derive basically the programs and projects required to build your capability in that space. And it could be around data, it could be around how you serve and manage customers, etc. I guess it failed because it was too big a step. We were going from, I could see what great would look like, but we were in a world where perhaps this was too big a step and we were asking too much of our business unit leaders. They were very busy dealing with a backlog of, I guess, today's issues, and it was too big a step for them to take in one leap to go, right, we want to talk about tomorrow. And so, yeah, that was humbling because we invested a bit of energy into that. But I think the reflection was it wasn't so much the concept that was flawed, it was just the execution. So we kind of regrouped, and in our second attempt, we're using a capability mapping light model and kind of leveraging the 80-20 principle in here and taking a more active partnering. So working with and co-creating rather than interviewing these business unit leaders and saying, what does it look like? We're helping them collaboratively, I guess, arrive at that conclusion and doing more of the documentation and lifting with the team. And it's really, we've tested this with a business unit so far and it's worked really well. We're halfway through a second and this looks like it's going to work for us. But yeah, I guess the lesson is, best practice is fantastic, but it's taking the time to think about the context in your business and going, well, how would this work here? Not would it work? Is it intellectually interesting or perhaps the right answer? But, what's required to make it work in your business? And in this case, it was Genesys.
Yeah, understanding that context is so crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what advice would you give to anyone who's, maybe in a senior role in IT and really aspires to be a chief digital officer?
Yeah, I guess the key thing here is, if you want to be an IT leader or any kind of leader, you've got to be a great leader, right? So make sure you're focusing on leadership development. not just the technical part. The technical is really important, but actually, honestly, I think the leadership bit is the standout feature. You're going to have amazing teams, and they'll probably know more than you do about the technical over time. Certainly, that's true. And so, making sure you're investing in your leadership development along the way. Taking the time to broaden your skills. Look to complement your IT background with customer, commercial, operational experience. This gets super important when you start having the conversations I was talking about earlier, and you're talking with other executives about how collectively you're steering a business. They will expect you to understand the technology, but if you can also understand a little bit about the worlds that they're operating in, you can really add value, and it helps you influence and collaborate, as we talked about before. I think another bit of advice perhaps would be, as you progress, you've got to get better at the discipline of controlling the controllables. So, because there are so many things you'll see and you'll be tempted to try and influence, but actually getting back to basics, which is what can I directly control, and focusing on those rather than all these things you might want to get involved with, because there's only so much time in the day. And last but not least, I've got a bit of a mantra I like. It was told to me by this really great leader called Srini Gopalan. He's now at Deutsche Telekom in Europe, but it's a frame for when you're joining a new business or a team. And he sums it up really nicely, which is you've got to be respectful of the past, realistic about the present, and optimistic about the future. When you think about that, it's actually really powerful, because you can come in, you can be new to a team, and you will as you progress. Sitting there second guessing the past isn't going to help. So be respectful, be curious, but be respectful. You've got to switch gears when you get onto the realistic about the present. There's no point in sugarcoating. You've got to get down to brass tacks. Where are we? What's the good? What's the opportunity we can improve? And then ultimately, optimistic about the future. You've got to believe you can do it. And you got to have plans you believe in. But I think that frame nicely sort of transitions the coming in without second guessing the past and really getting excited about where you're going, balanced with that realism of where you are.
So speaking of the future and where you're going, we're now at the tail end of 2022, and 2023 is not far away. What's important to you in the months ahead?
Yeah, so from a work perspective, we have an exciting agenda when it comes to delivering on our purpose at Genesis. And that's with some really meaningful decarbonisation projects. So that's working with our customers to transition them to lower carbon fuels like electricity, which is exciting. We're doing this in some pretty innovative ways with some great partners. And so that's a big focus. I touched on earlier, we've got a large digital transformation within our retail business. So that's taking a fair bit of focus and really continuing evolving our operating model, something I'm really passionate about. You probably picked up on that earlier, Kathy, with all the examples on what we're doing with our people. We refreshed this in July, and we've probably got about another 3 months of bedding that in as we move forward. So really excited about that. And then ultimately, as you mentioned, it's not far till Christmas. So from a personal perspective, I'm looking forward to a great Kiwi summer. We've had a long, wet winter. So I'm looking forward to some sunshine with family and friends. And I've got a slightly bonkers 5-year-old and a super cute 1-year-old. So looking forward to some family fun and adventures with them.
Exciting times ahead. And yes, we're all looking forward to some sunshine and some beach time. Peter Kennedy, Chief Digital Officer at Genesis Energy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Bye.